Before we begin, take a moment to like the video, subscribe if you haven't yet, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and when. It helps more than you think, and make sure stories like this keep finding you. Now, let's begin. My name is Aaron Collins. I have worked the night shift at St. Bellamy Medical Center for almost 7 years now, long enough to stop flinching when heart monitors flatline, or when the fluorescent lights in the hallway buzz and flicker without warning, long enough to learn which silences are normal and which ones mean you need to run. It was a Thursday night, February 8th, the kind of cold that seeps into the concrete, where even the heated vents in the staff lounge cough like they're dying. I clocked in at 11:30 p.m., went through the usual huddle. 4 patients on observation in ICU North, 2 in step-down, and 1 in end-of-life comfort care. Nothing out of the ordinary, until I saw the assignment slip clipped to my chart. Room 517, my fingers froze on the edge of the clipboard. I blinked, looked again. Room 517. Is this a typo? I asked. Carla, the charge nurse, looked up. Nope. New admit. My mouth went dry. From where? There's no room 517, not since the 5th floor got sealed off. Carla gave me a look that told me she didn't want to say more. It's reopened. For now. Transfer case. Confidential. You're the only one assigned. She said it like that should explain everything. Like there was nothing strange about a sealed floor, suddenly springing back to life in the middle of a snow-choked winter. But it was strange, and every instinct in me knew it. You see, the 5th floor had been closed for years. Water damage, they said. Old electrical. Too risky. Not worth repairing. No one ever talked about the real reason, because we didn't have to. Everyone just knew when you passed the elevators. You didn't press the button for floor 5. Even the med students knew that. Like it was an unspoken rule passed down through badge scanners and overnight orientation manuals. The 5th floor was dark. It was done. And now, apparently, it was not. I stood there for a second too long. Carla gave me a tight smile. You're the best we've got for this one, Aaron, which meant you're careful. You don't complain. You've seen things and kept your mouth shut. God help me. She was right. So I nodded. I took the elevator, and I pressed a button I hadn't touched in 7 years. 5. The lift lurched slow, hesitant, as if the machinery itself wasn't sure it was allowed to go there anymore. A part of me wished it wouldn't. I watched the flickering panel light crawl past 2, then 3, then a pause that lasted too long, before it jumped to 5. The doors open, and I swear to you, for just a moment, it felt like the hospital was holding its breath. The hallway on the 5th floor was dim, like it hadn't quite remembered how to be lit. Only 1 row of ceiling panels buzzed to life, their fluorescent glow faint and uneven. Everything smelled stale, not like dust, more like air that hadn't been disturbed in years, like something trapped and waiting. There was no staff lounge, no med cart, no sound but the soft hum of a single portable heart monitor somewhere in the distance. My sneakers made too much noise on the wax tile. Room 517 was at the far end. Alone. The door was slightly ajar. A sliver of pale light spilled out onto the floor like a blade. I pushed it open slowly, half expecting it to creak. It didn't. It swung open silently, unnaturally, as if someone had recently oiled the hinges and no one told the rest of the hospital. Inside, the walls were bare. No whiteboard. No nurse call button. No visitor chair. No hand sanitizer dispenser. Just a bed. A vitals monitor. An oxygen tank that looked old enough to belong in a museum. And in the middle of it all, a man. Mid-50s. Maybe. Pale. But not sickly. His arms lay neatly at his sides. Fingers folded like he had just taken a deep breath and laid down for a nap. He wasn't intubated. No IV fluids. No ECG leads. Just the monitor. Beeping steadily. 72 BPM. But it wasn't his vitals that made me pause. It was his eyes. They were open. Not wide. Not shocked, but attentive. He stared at the ceiling like he was waiting for something to appear. Or someone. I cleared my throat. Mr. R. No response. Daniel. His eyes blinked, slowly. Then he turned his head toward me, not quickly, not robotically, but in the way someone turns when they already know you're there. That was when I saw it. No wristband. I looked around. No patient chart at the foot of the bed. No clipboard. No whiteboard with allergies or care team names. Just a single object on the windowsill. A flash drive, labeled in Sharpie. Do not open unless authorized. I picked it up instinctively, then hesitated. It was cold, not just room temp cold. Refrigerated cold, like it had been pulled from something not entirely alive. Daniel, if that was his name, followed my every movement. Do you need anything? I asked. His voice was barely above a whisper. No. I've already waited. Waited for what? He looked me straight in the eye. And smile. To be heard. Something in my chest tightened. The monitor continued its steady rhythm behind me. The room had no shadows, and yet it felt darker by the second. I stepped back. I'll let the attending know you're stable. He nodded once slowly. Solemnly, as if I had just confirmed something important. As I turned to leave, I heard him murmur behind me, "You're not the first." I froze, but when I turned back, he was looking at the ceiling again, eyes wide, breathing calm, and the monitor still read 72 BPM. I returned to ICU North like someone climbing out of a dream they weren't sure they were supposed to have. The 5th floor left a taste in my mouth, dry copper and ozone, like static had settled in my lungs. I went to log the admission, but there was no file. No wristband meant no patient ID. No entry in the system. No insurance. No attending physician. Just a name. Scribbled by hand on the paper assignment sheet. Daniel R. That doesn't happen in real hospitals. It shouldn't. I knocked lightly on Carla's door. She looked up from her laptop. Slightly annoyed. What is it? There's no record for Daniel R. She didn't flinch. It's a special intake. What does that mean? Above our pay grade. Her tone was final, like she'd rehearsed it. They just said he'd be on 5. You're assigned. That's all you need to know. I almost asked who they were, but I didn't. Instead, I went back to the med room and tried to focus on the basics patient logs. My checks, paperwork, things that made sense. Until the monitor beeped. It was soft at first, barely audible over the hum of the vents, but it got louder insistent. I looked at the wall panel. Code blue, room 517. My heart skipped. I grabbed the portable radio from the counter and keyed in. Carla. I'm seeing a code blue from 517. Are you getting this? A pause. Then, what are you talking about? My board's clear. I stared at the wall screen, still blinking. Code blue, room 517. I'm going up. I grabbed the emergency kit and took the elevator again. The ride was smoother this time, almost eager. The doors opened onto the same pale, flickering hallway, only now It wasn't quiet. The heart monitor in 517 was screeching in full alarm. I ran. I shoved open the door and froze. Daniel lay on the bed, same position, hands folded, eyes closed. The monitor beside him was flatlined, no heartbeat. I moved quickly, grabbing the defibrillator paddles, reaching for his neck, checking for a pulse. Warm. His skin was warm, too warm for a corpse. My eyes darted back to the screen, still flatline. I leaned in, heart hammering. And then his eyes opened. My hand recoiled. He stared at me. Calm. Too calm. "Aaron," he whispered. I didn't speak. I couldn't, because I had never told him my name. "How do you know who I am?" He smiled just faintly. Not malicious, not kind, just inevitable. "I've heard you, even when you weren't speaking." The monitor shrieked once more. I dropped the paddles and stepped back. I radioed Carla again. "Are you seeing this? 517 is coding. I need backup." Nothing. Only static. And then her voice. There's no alarm on my board. "You sure you're okay?" I looked back at Daniel. He had closed his eyes again, breathing steady. The monitor was still flatline, and as I stepped out of the room, my pulse climbing into my ears, the door shut itself behind me. Soft. Quiet. From the inside. I did not sleep when my shift ended. I drove home in silence, the heater wheezing against the February cold. Fingers clenched on the steering wheel the whole way. No music, no podcasts. Just the screeching echo of that flatline monitor bouncing around in my skull. I tried not to think about what Daniel said. "I failed. I've heard you, even when you weren't speaking." That line crawled behind my eyes like a worm, burrowing deeper every time I blinked. When I returned the next night, Friday, February 9th, I told myself I wouldn't go back up there. Not unless I was called. Not unless it was urgent. But the assignment sheet was already waiting. Room 517 nurse. E. Collins. No one else was assigned to the entire 5th floor. I took a long breath, choked down my hesitation, and went through the motions. My checks, report, notes. It was halfway through the shift around 2:30 a.m. when the light above Carla's office turned off, and I knew she had clocked out early. Typical Friday night, which left me alone. Again, I lingered in the nurse's station, sipping half-cold coffee, trying to convince myself to finish my rounds on the 3rd floor. That's when I noticed the clipboard. It wasn't there before. Old, wooden, splintered at the corners, resting on the edge of the med cart like it had always been there. I picked it up without thinking. A brittle piece of tape clung to the back. In red ink, it read, "Megan Hale, RN, last assignment. 517. The name punched me in the gut. Megan Hale, the nurse who vanished last October, never showed up for her shift. Locker empty. Car still parked in the hospital lot for 3 days. No goodbye, no note, no trace. They'd said she moved, took another job. We all knew that was bullshit. And now this. I flipped open the clipboard. No patient file, just a folded slip of paper tucked into the backing like someone had hidden it there. I pulled it free, hand trembling. It was a torn page from a notebook, rushed handwriting, desperate strokes. The room has no number, but it counts. Don't stay after 3:17 a.m. Something listens, something feeds, and it wears their faces. I stared at the note until the words blurred together. That was when I heard the ding. The elevator opening. Upstairs. The one no one uses. My breath hitched. I looked toward the stairwell. toward the path I had told myself I wouldn't take again. But my feet were already moving. I climbed the steps in silence. No radios. No alarms. No backup. The 5th floor was waiting. When I reached the top, I expected darkness, but the hallway was lit. All of it. Not flickering. Not stuttering. Just bright. Too bright. Unnaturally bright. Room 517's door was open. Daniel sat upright in bed, and for the first time, he was smiling. He was awake, sitting upright, hands folded over the bedsheet like a man waiting for church to start. Daniel looked unchanged, still pale, still calm, but there was something in his eyes now, a weight, not alertness, awareness, like he'd finally recognized something in me, or maybe something behind me. "Why are you here again?" he asked. I swallowed. "I'm on shift." "No," he said, shaking his head slightly. "You didn't need to come. You flatlined last night." "No," he said again. The room did. I didn't know how to respond to that. I glanced at the vitals monitor, still reading 72 BPM. Oxygen levels perfect. Temp normal. Perfectly alive. Perfectly monitored. Except he wasn't in the system. And the room didn't exist on any official floor plan. And the nurse before me had written, "Don't stay after 3:17 a.m. I checked my watch. 3:08 a.m. "Daniel," I said slowly, "was there someone assigned to you before me?" "A nurse named Megan Hale." He stared through me, not past me, through me, as if he could see everything I had done, every fear I had tried to bury. "She listened, too," he said, "but she asked the wrong questions." I took a half step back. "What questions?" Daniel tilted his head, the motion stiff and unnatural. "She asked where I came from." "You haven't asked that. Where did you come from?" He smiled, not with his mouth, but with something behind his eyes. I didn't. I looked down. My hands were trembling. I gripped the edge of the vitals monitor just to ground myself. Cold plastic. Something real. Something that beeped in time. 3:13 a.m. He spoke again, voice softer than breath. "They don't like it when you stay too long." "Who's they?" Daniel didn't answer. Instead, the monitor flickered. Just once. Then again. Then faster. The waveform glitched for a moment, not in a medical sense. In a digital, wrong sense. Like someone had hacked into the signal and fed it something that wasn't a heartbeat. The screen went black. Then flashed white text. "Aaron Collins active." What? My pulse screamed in my throat. Is this some kind of ding? The sound came from the hallway. Elevator again. I turned and everything changed. The lights didn't flicker. They shifted. The bulbs overhead turned amber, then reddish. The hallway beyond room 517 looked longer. Too long, like it had grown. Footsteps. Slow. Barefoot. Wet. Slapping the tile in rhythmic, dragging thuds. Daniel whispered, "You stayed too long." 3:17 a.m. The lights all went out. Pitch black. Then something breathed behind me. Long, wet, thick with phlegm and dust. A breath that didn't belong to lungs anymore. I turned and saw nothing, but I could hear it. Not outside the room. Inside. Daniel still sat in bed, but his head was tilted all the way back now. Neck craned in an impossible angle. He wasn't breathing. But something was... I bolted. The hallway was different now. Doors that weren't there before now lined the walls. Each one had no number, just a rusted metal plaque scratched with letters too faded to read. The elevator was gone. The only way out was the stairs. But even as I ran, I realized the stairwell door was farther away than it should have been. Like the hallway was stretching. Like it wanted me here. Like it didn't care who I was anymore. Only that I had stayed. I don't remember how I got back to ICU North. I must have run. Or maybe I walked and just forgot the time in between. Trauma does that, it smudges the tape, rewinds over itself until you question whether anything happened at all. But I do remember the stairwell door. I remember slamming into it with my shoulder, praying it wouldn't be locked. I remember tumbling down 2 flights before catching myself on the railing. And I remember, vividly, how the fluorescent lights flickered back to normal the moment I hit the 3rd floor. Like nothing had happened. Like room 517 didn't exist. When I finally reached the nurse's station, Carla was there. She looked up from her tablet. Startled. Jesus. Aaron, you look like hell. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Instead, I handed her the note I had taken from the clipboard, the one from Megan Hale. Carla read it silently, then folded it in half and slid it into her coat pocket like it was just another med error report. Where did you get this? From the clipboard at the med cart. Her face tightened. That cart was cleared months ago. Apparently not. She didn't speak for a moment, then said, carefully, maybe you should take the rest of the night off. I should have walked out of that hospital and never looked back. But something inside me wouldn't let go. Because this wasn't just a haunting. This was organized. After my shift, I went digging. Not in the hospital records. Those were sanitized, long ago wiped of anything not legally necessary. But the old physical archives, the dusty basement level where the blueprints and microfiche still live, those were harder to fake. I used my badge to get past the old supply door. Past a sign that said authorized personnel only. The hallway beyond was concrete, no paint. No ceiling tiled. Just pipes and the sound of dripping water echoing forever. The archive room was cold and quiet. I spent hours scanning the hospital's structural blueprints. The 5th floor was added in 1974, closed in 2016. That much was consistent. But when I pulled the original plans, the hand-drawn ones from 1969, I found something else. There was no 5th floor. There was, however, a sub-basement, marked Level B3. No description. No square footage. No stair access. Only one route in. A dedicated elevator shaft that had since been bricked off behind the new cafeteria freezer. I felt my blood go cold. I had walked past that wall 100 times. It never occurred to me it wasn't supposed to be a wall. I waited until the next shift. Saturday night. February 10th. I didn't tell anyone. I went alone. The freezer in the basement hadn't been used in years. You could tell by the mold along the door seams and the way your boots stuck slightly to the floor when you walk. I counted the steps exactly. 7 paces left of the compressor. The drywall was newer there. Too clean. Like someone had repaired something that no longer existed. I tapped lightly. Hollow. Behind it, metal. I took out my flashlight and traced my fingers along the molding. And that's when I saw it. A seam in the wall. And carved faintly into the steel behind it, barely visible beneath layers of paint and grime, was a single word. B3. I didn't know what B3 meant. But I knew one thing. It was never meant to be found. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Even in my own bed. The silence felt wrong. It wasn't quiet. It was waiting. And something about that steel plate B3 kept pressing behind my eyes every time I blink, so I did the only thing I hadn't done yet. I opened the flash drive. The one I found in room 517 on my first night. The one that said, Do not open unless authorized. I hesitated for a long moment, then plugged it in. The screen blinked black. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then a folder appeared. No labels, just a single icon. When I clicked it, a grainy video file loaded. Timestamp, October 17, 2023. The night Megan Hale disappeared. The footage was from a ceiling-mounted security cam. The view was angled toward a bed. I recognized it immediately. Room 17. But something was wrong with the walls. They weren't hospital white. They were concrete, exposed, pitted, old. Megan stood beside the bed, facing a patient I couldn't see. Her back was to the camera. She was holding something, maybe a clipboard, maybe a journal. Then the lights in the video flickered. When they came back on, Megan was gone. Not walked out. Not moved off screen. Gone. The bed was empty. The file ended. I stared at the blank screen for almost a full minute. Frozen. Then another file opened on its own. This one was just audio. A man's voice, deep, but tired, slurred in places, like something was unraveling him from the inside. They used to think sleep was peace, but they were wrong. In deep sleep, things move, things watch, and if the brain is open long enough, they enter. Static, then another voice distorted, almost overlapping itself, like it was speaking in multiple directions at once. B3 was never a floor. It was an anchor, a cage. The rituals didn't banish them. They fed them, bound them to the building. I tore the flash drive out of the port. I was shaking, full-body tremors, and I hadn't even processed the worst part yet. The first voice. It was Daniel. The next night, I clocked in early. I didn't check in with Carla. I didn't grab a med card. I didn't even swipe my badge. I just went down, back to the basement. This time, I brought tools. The wall behind the freezer was drywall, thin and hollow. A few swings with a crowbar and a flashlight between my teeth, and I was through. Behind it, just like the blueprint said, was an elevator. Rusty. Dead, or so I thought, until the panel lit up. Just one button. B3. It blinked. Once. Then again. Then stayed solid. I stepped inside. The elevator groaned, dust puffing from its corners like it was exhaling for the first time in decades. And then it moved. Down. Past the basement. Past B1. Past B2. Then silence. And the doors opened. I stepped out. Into blackness. And before my flashlight could even catch the edges of the space, the doors behind me closed. The flashlight flickered the moment the doors sealed behind me. I slapped it against my palm once. Twice, and it steadied, casting a cone of weak light into the dark. The floor was concrete. The air was damp and metallic, like wet copper and old sweat. The silence pressed against my skin like plastic wrap thin. Tight, suffocating. I took one step forward, then another. The hallway curved slightly to the left, and every footfall echoed as if the corridor stretched far longer than it should. Pipes lined the ceiling, some leaking, some groaning faintly like old bones settling. I saw doors, heavy metal ones, set into the walls at uneven intervals. No numbers, no handles, only rectangular observation slits, most of them fogged from the inside. Something told me not to look. I looked anyway. The first door I passed revealed only blackness. The second, a chair, wooden, strapped down. The third had movement. I froze. Behind the glass, barely visible in the flickering beam of my flashlight, was a hospital bed, A figure lay on it unmoving but with eyes wide open and glowing faintly red in the dark. I stumbled backward. The flashlight cut out. Darkness swallowed everything. Then I heard it. The sound of dragging metal. Behind me. I turned, and the hallway was no longer empty. Daniel stood at the far end. Head tilted, arms limp at his sides, not walking. Just appearing? One frame at a time, like he was blinking into reality between breaths. "Where did you go?" He called. His voice came from the left, then the right, then everywhere. "You stayed too long, Aaron, and now you're part of it." I ran. The hallway bent and twisted. My steps no longer echoed. The walls shifted. They were no longer cinder block or concrete. They were pulsing, fleshy, breathing, like I was inside something alive. The corridor ended at a single door. Wooden. Familiar. I recognized the frame. The chipped paint, the yellowed placard beside it that read, "Room 517. No," I whispered. "That's impossible." Because I was underground. But the number was real. The room was real. And I could hear the monitor beeping inside. I opened the door, and what I saw nearly broke me. I was in the room, lying in the bed, eyes closed, hooked to monitors, breathing steadily. I stepped closer, heart pounding. The figure in the bed had my face. Same jawline. Same bruised rings under the eye. Same tiny scar on the chin from when I fell off a bike at age 9. Me, but not me. The vitals monitor beside the bed blinked. 72 BPM. Steady. Daniel appeared beside the bed, not walking, just existing. He placed one hand on the railing and looked down at my body. "She's still dreaming," he said, "but we're almost done." Then he looked up at me. His eyes were empty, and his mouth opened far too wide. And from somewhere inside that impossible mouth, I heard them. Whispers. Thousands of them. Speaking in unison. Overlapping and drowning and folding into each other like pages burned and rewritten again and again. "You are the last." I couldn't breathe. The sound of the whispers poured through me like liquid smoke, not heard, but felt. They weren't voices. Not exactly. They were memories that never belonged to me. Regrets. Confessions. Sobbing final words. Promises made in hospital beds. Last gasps of people I never met, all of them inside me at once. I backed away from the bed. From me. "No," I whispered. "This isn't real." Daniel tilted his head. Eyes dull but fixed on me. "That's what they all say." At first, "What is this place?" He blinked slowly, like a man waking up underwater. "This isn't a place. It's a pattern. A pattern. Room 517 was never about a floor. It's the anchor. The mouth. The mouth to what?" He gestured around us. The walls began to ripple. Not metaphorically, literally. The drywall pulsed like lung tissue. The monitor by the bed stuttered. Then showed another reading. Megan Hale 72 BPM. The lights flickered. Then the vitals changed again. Nina Brandt 72 BPM. Another nurse who vanished. Then again, Joseph Benner 72 BPM. Daniel smiled faintly. They thought the rituals would trap them, keep them contained. But the truth is, he leaned in. It kept them fed. He stepped toward me. I stepped back right into the wall. Only it wasn't a wall anymore. It breathed beneath my spine. The whispers crescendoed. Now louder. Now faster, no longer layered voices, but a singular need. "You were supposed to be the last," Daniel said. "But something changed. You resisted. What do you mean? The others accepted their role. The dream consumed them. You? He reached out. Fingers grazed my forehead. You opened the wrong doors. I felt cold seep through my skull. And then I saw them. The others. In rooms just like this one. Megan. Nina. Joseph. Nurses. Janitors. Even a doctor or two. Lying in beds. Alive but unmoving. Eyes open. Bodies stable. Monitors blinking 72 BPM. All of them trapped in the loop. Feeding it. Anchoring it. Daniel's voice returned, distant but echoing inside me. Once you see the room, once you hear it, it never lets go. I tried to scream, but my voice didn't work. The walls pulsed faster. The monitor beeped louder. Aaron Collins, 72 BPM. The last thing I remember before the darkness swallowed me was Daniel whispering, "The dream needs witnesses." 3 nights later. Monday, February 12th. Carla leaned on the edge of the nurses' station, scrolling through the roster like she'd done 1,000 times before. The third-floor night shift was thin again. Flu cases were up. Floaters were out. Nothing new, except one thing. A new name had appeared in the assignment system. Collins. Aaron, patient room 517. Carla stared at the screen. There was no patient file. No notes. No vitals feed. Just that name. Tucked neatly at the end of the report like it had always been there. She blinked. Hit refresh. Still there. She tapped her pen against the desk. Then slowly looked up at the schedule board. No nurse was assigned to 517 because 517 had been removed from the active floor plan again. The hallway cameras showed a blank wall where the door had been. Carla's fingers hovered above the keyboard. Then she pressed a few keys and cleared her throat. "Hey, we've got a new night shift hired," she said to the med tech beside her. "Can you make sure they're prepped with their floor assignment?" "Yeah." "Where they starting?" She glanced back at the screen, paused, then smiled. Room 517. Somewhere deep beneath St. Bellamy Medical Center. The vitals monitor blinked softly. Patient. Aaron Collins. Status. Stable. Heart rate. 72 BPM. In the room that didn't exist, on the floor that wasn't real, hooked to machines no one monitored, and in the darkness just outside her glass observation window, Daniel watched, still smiling, still waiting.